What is going on, everyone? Thanks for checking in. Trade to Black, presented by Dutchie. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our Canadian viewers out there as we got ourselves a Monday on the horizon. Got an interesting tweet that went out last night. There's more rumors about rescheduling, that it's a done deal. A unnamed source from a Trump administration, a senior advisors. Unless there's real names and real timelines, it's just still speculation in my point of view. But here we are. This is what we do, and we find out if there's some source behind it. But today's podcast, we're going to talk about Governor DeSantis talking about, hey, voters, they want cannabis legalized. Thanks, Captain Obvious. But he still says no. Why? And we're going to find out through Anthony, and Michael Bronstein is going to come on in just a moment just to talk about why the timing of all this. Plus, don't keep your eyes off of Virginia. Right now, Abigail Spanberger, she had a big lead over Winsome Earle-Sears, but that race is actually tightening up. So is there some risk involving adult use cannabis in Virginia? We'll find out more as Michael comes in for our weekly Insider's Edge segment. So let's welcome AV here on a Monday. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Nice.
Good to see you.
Nice little eventful Sunday evening.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Got the thank you for the super chat, Mr. Cold Memo. Anybody else feeling gracious and thankful today? Feel free to donate to super chat. We appreciate it, but I'm not going to ask too much for that. I appreciate everybody just for logging on here today and giving their views and comments. But yes, you sent over that link to me last night, and all of a sudden I started looking, and this tweet got a ton of attention. But it is what it is.
I mean, it's more carrot dangling. I can't sit here and look at a statement from the administration that now says, well, we're waiting on this, or, well, the timing isn't this, or we need this to happen. They're either going to do it or they're not going to do it. Like, to me, the tweet last night, whether it's true or whether it's false, I'm going to err on the side of I don't really trust it for all intents and purposes. There are several things that the Trump administration could be waiting for, but it seems like just another excuse. Like, oh, we got the press release drafted. Oh, it's on Bondi's desk, but we're waiting for this to happen. We're all waiting for it to happen. We all want it to happen. We all need it to happen, if I'm being frank. But at the same time, I'm not really putting any of my eggs in the basket of a senior advisor says the press release is finalized. They're just waiting on another event to transpire to actually get it out there and get this thing done.
David Benz, the PR is written, just waiting for the quote unquote event. Yes. Did you write the PR, David? Did you write the PR, David? Maybe you did.
It's just more carrot dangling. I'm not looking into it. I'm not betting anything on it. It's going to happen when it's going to happen. If it happens.
Somebody did comment in that thread about, an event, and it could be around Veterans Day and the VA, which is a great angle. And it does make sense, but again, we don't know anything. And, you can sit here and speculate all you want and think about that makes sense timing wise. There's a lot of things that have made sense timing wise over the past 10 years, have they not?
Yeah. And I mean, I said I would stop with the timing rhetoric after this month of September elapsed. I'm not going to sit here and say that I think it's coming in Veterans Day. I'm not going to sit here and hypothesize on what event-driven what event-driven headline could come out with cannabis rescheduling. If he's going to do it, he's going to do it, and we'll all be caught off sides for the most part. But whether the CR getting completed that has the language in there to start increasing access to cannabinoids to vets, or whether it's around Veterans Day, I mean, I can't sit here and say that we're shooting a target now for mid-November. I'm kind of over that business.
Yes.
As it is right now.
Love Brian Dabrowski comes in, stirs the pot. The quote unquote, the event will be him telling everyone he already legalized with the farm bill.
That's what he wishes, but not everybody's wishes come true.
Oh, Brian, if I had to go to battle with a team, I wouldn't want to play against you. I'd want you on my side, my friend. But all good. Love the humor. We're going to get into a couple of topics here today, but real quick, a word from our friends over at Morgan & Morgan. Hey everyone, there's a reason investors get excited when a stock splits and suddenly feels twice as valuable. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. Think about it. When you're investing, you want the right team in your corner. The same is true if you're injured in dealing with an insurance company, and that is where Morgan & Morgan comes into the equation. Why? Well, they got more than 1,000 attorneys and over 100 offices nationwide. They've been fighting for the people for over 35 years, and their track record, get this, it's hard to ignore. Here's what I mean by that. One example, in Florida, a client was offered just $350,000, but walked away with $12 million. That would help the portfolio. In Pennsylvania, another client turned $650,000 into a $26 million offer. That's a 40x return. So in total, Morgan & Morgan has recovered more than $25 billion for over 500,000 clients. So when you hire them, it's like bringing in a legal army that has your back. Because if you're injured due to someone else's negligence, you deserve to be paid. And let's be honest, not all law firms are created equally. So with Morgan & Morgan, get this, their fee, it's free unless they win. You can start your claim right now by clicking the link in the description or by scanning this QR code on your screen with your phone. At the end of the day, if you want what you deserve, make sure you go in with the right team by contacting Morgan & Morgan today. All right, now let's get back to the rest of our live stream. All right, back here, Trade to Black here to Monday, presented by Dutchie, Anthony Varrell, Shad Dales. Okay, let's start down in Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis just made some comments that really stood out. For the first time, he's openly admitting that Florida voters overwhelmingly support cannabis legalization, but in the same breath, he still opposes it. He called parts of the state's legalization ballot misleading, claimed it would benefit big operators like Trulieve, and even said, quote, "You can't function as a state if you smell marijuana everywhere." What do you think of the timing of this and why he's saying this now?
Timing's interesting. I mean, I know Ron DeSantis likes to feel like Florida is a state of freedom and Florida is a state of choice for the most part, but it seems to be the state that whatever Ron DeSantis wants goes. If the people of Florida overwhelmingly wanted it, if the people of Florida want adult use cannabis, and if the people of Florida's not going to smell like just pot everywhere if adult use cannabis passes. There's plenty of access to cannabis right now. I mean, Ron DeSantis went against the will of the people. He used his own personal opinions and his own personal philosophy and influenced policy. I'm looking forward to him being gone next year as it relates to the governor's seat in the state of Florida, especially after this. This is him just putting his knife in and just twisting it a little bit.
That's a good point. That is a very good point. I was going to say, do you think in some ways he's kind of changing a little bit about his national audience? Like, is this in some ways like a test balloon for how...
I mean, for the national audience or for just anybody that's looking at the situation, for him to come out and say, I know my constituents and I know my citizens of my state wanted this. However, I think I know what's best for them. Therefore, I took this tact and made sure this thing got shot down. On a national stage, it's even worse. Like, you don't want the president of the United States having that kind of mentality. Ron DeSantis is just as bad as Gavin Newsom, and it's rules for thee, not me camp that he falls under. And for him, this is kind of just shooting himself in the foot. I was the biggest fan of Ron DeSantis before Amendment 3. I think Ron DeSantis has been a good governor for the most part. I think Ron DeSantis has been very steadfast in any emergencies that have happened in the state of Florida. I think Ron DeSantis has governed Florida pretty damn well for the most part. But Ron DeSantis showed his true colors as it relates to Amendment 3 and really the kind of person that he is. Yeah, and I can't agree with that person moving forward.
Yeah, we all know his true colors about what he's done in the past, but moving forward, like, I can't help but feel like he's probably looking at what's going on in Washington. If there is some change, like, does he look at this and say, hey, I was never opposed to actually cannabis in Florida. I just want to control it, I guess, under what he views should be the right way. Like,
he said he was opposed to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you mean? He hijacked emergency funds to campaign against it.
Yeah. Well, the way it was written up, that was a big issue for him. But what I'm saying is now it's just like, is he changing his stance on this all? Because does he think that there could be some sort of direction to Washington? So is he playing politics at its finest right now in some ways. That's where I'm going with this.
DeSantis has no chance of running for president in 2028, if that's what you're getting towards. JD Vance is probably going to be the front runner for that. Donald Trump putting Joe Gruters as the RNC chair was a middle finger to JD Vance, a middle finger to Ron DeSantis for as far as like a political chess move. Ron DeSantis's political career is probably over once he's out of the governor's seat of Florida. He's either going to go to some defense contractor, become some high-powered lobbyist. Maybe he runs for a senator's seat in the state of Florida, but I don't think Ron DeSantis's political career has any more upwards mobility from where he's at right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think he's, for sure, he's not going to be president of the United States. But my whole point in this is that, look, if these guys are willing to do what they did last fall, nothing would surprise me as far as how they could start changing their stance a little bit and how Republicans might start leading the next phase of reform and not necessarily resisting it if they're starting to see and hear things behind the scenes in Washington is where I'm going with this. But it is what it is. And I can see by a lot of the comments here, not a lot of Ron DeSantis, Governor DeSantis fans here, especially in the cannabis space. To get more comments on this topic, let's now head into Insider's Edge with Attach. Let's go, Arns. All right, Monday afternoon, time for our very favorite segment of the week. Let's welcome in Michael Bronstein, president of the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. Insider's Edge, presented by Attach. Good to see you. How's your Monday?
Gentlemen, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Monday's going well. You know,
very good. Yes, good.
So you weekend, how's your Monday? We're supposed to have a storm here. It didn't happen.
Oh, looks like you had a storm in New York last week. Your Eagles look pretty bad there, my friend. Really bad.
That's too soon.
We won't get into football all that right now. But you overheard probably Anthony and I talking about this timing of DeSantis coming out and saying what he said. Did you get a chance to see some of the story and your thoughts on it?
Yeah, and I think there's like an acknowledgement here because remember, like, it's interesting because he acknowledges, all right, cannabis legalization, I know it's popular. I see the polling. I know it's popular.
Yeah.
We have this issue that's going on that we know that this issue is very popular, but politicians have not moved from.
Why?
Well, we live in a representative democracy, not a direct democracy. I think there's a lag time in between. Well, I'll tell you something. I think there are a couple of things. One is I don't think there's enough of when you look at the voters who are influenced by cannabis legalization, most politics is played by the base right now. And DeSantis's base, you could have 60%, over 60% of Floridians, if they're asked, straight up or down on legalization, say, okay, yeah, I'm for it. When you look at his demographics and his base, it's not that voter that necessarily matters. So I think that like the type of politics that we're in right now, it doesn't favor moving to the center on issues. It favors moving to the left, the very far left, or the very far right on a lot of issues. And cannabis legalization actually doesn't fall neatly on partisan lines necessarily. So you don't have an issue. If you had an issue that was literally just picked up by one party over another, and they were sort of running election campaigns on it, you would get a different result potentially than what would happen legislatively. That's one facet of it. And I think that's a facet of it that we see play around the country. Legalization, the support for legalization is countrywide long and an inch deep, meaning that everybody supports it, but the passion around it is not the same thing as, like, we're not talking about taxes. No. We're not talking about abortion. We're not talking about gun rights, right? Where there's passion. There's more passion about it. All of us here are extremely passionate.
So do you think?
But it's an inch deep.
So do you think that let's say we could go back in time to where there is no medical or adult use cannabis, period, in the continental United States. If cannabis was an issue at that point and we were trying to pass national rules and regs to bring a program online, would it be easier to get it done than retroactively doing it like we're doing right now? Because the problem is everyone has access to cannabis for the most part, regardless of the reform that's going on in Washington. Like, you can get cannabis now, medical, rec. I mean, for the most part, everybody can get the plant. Would there be more passion towards passing this stuff if the constituents' access kind of teetered on that? If you get what I'm saying.
I think it had to, given the history like of what happened in the United States. It sort of is happening the way that it has to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Were there some things that could have happened beforehand? Right. I think a states' rights approach 4 or 5 years ago, right, which was what was being coalesced around at the time. If it had been stuck to, one of the problems is that you have two competing visions of legalization in some respects in Congress. You sort of have a states' rights with minimal federal overlay, and then you sort of have a more kind of robust regulatory structure that inserts, I think, some more politics into being supportive of something or not. That hasn't really been litigated quite frankly. And it's hard if you go in and you make certain arguments, it doesn't fall right across all of the constituencies that are in Congress. And that's been, I think that's been an issue that we've seen at the congressional level. Are we closer? Yes. One of the things I thought we'd be more closer with is, okay, we legalize in a bunch of states. Sometimes the people who represent those states in Congress, in the Senate, they're not for legalization. Right? It happens, or it takes a while for them to get there, right? Or if they have a medical program, it takes them even a while to figure out that safe banking should be something that should be passed, right? Think about that. Safe banking is probably the most obvious, going all the way back to the 2010s, early. If I told you that we were sitting in 2025,
wild
banking solution wouldn't be on the table. It's literally the most obvious thing. But the lesson of why safe banking has not been passed yet is also the lesson of why cannabis legalization hasn't been passed yet too, because the contours of the political discussion on marijuana legalization touch so many different things, right? You're not just talking about food and drug policy. You're talking about criminal justice policy.
Yeah, good point.
Right? You're not just talking about, right? So you're actually talking about a piece of legislation that if it is put in place, it amends the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act, right? That's one thing that it does. It amends the criminal statutes and the CSA. That's another thing that it does, right? Usually you're only dealing with one issue that touches one thing.
Yeah.
The jurisdictional issues alone on this issue are complex. So I think that we've learned that.
Very good point.
I think that we've learned that. And I think that safe banking actually, especially during the markup, was really instructive to see ideologically how Congress is split really for the first time when they were talking about it. So, and then also, like, people don't have the logical sense. Like, I'm seeing in the comments, it's like, all right, well, if somebody believes X, they should believe Y. And all of us think that way because we're in the industry and we're like, how could you think like, okay, well, intoxicating hemp is okay, but marijuana legalization isn't? Like, isn't that the right? So I think that there are larger questions that people don't understand that policy, and it still hasn't gained widestream acceptance.
I've always talked about in the past, Anthony, about incremental steps, not this comprehensive approach. But the way, Michael, you put it is that you look at it, you're right. There are a lot of moving parts. Expungement, FDA. You talk about the VA. You talk about Look what Trump announced on for late Friday afternoon with pharma drugs, Dr. Oz, who's a supporter of medical cannabis. Then you bring in AstraZeneca, who's investing $50 billion in the States. There's all these moving parts and how that could change things, the complexion. So it's easier said than done. And you're right. That's why there hasn't been any legalization, but I'm still somewhat surprised that there at least has not been rescheduling announced.
Yeah, but there hasn't been passing of any of those incremental steps you just mentioned either.
Right.
I mean, even if the thesis is that incremental versus comprehensive should make the process easier to start to get done, we haven't even got out of the starting blocks yet. Those incremental steps that are literally sitting there waiting to get knocked down are just stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
They're not moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that the incremental steps, though, if we talk about rescheduling, I think that that's sort of the first time that folks in a broader scale accepted some level of incrementalism.
Correct.
Right. And by the way, there are a lot of people, there are probably people here, right? And I would concede this too. Rescheduling doesn't do enough, right? But it will be the most historic thing that happens on this issue. What happens with research? What happens with tax treatment, right?
Yeah.
Those things are considered a breakthrough.
Of course.
Okay. They would be considered a breakthrough. But when we look at any individual policy, there are folks who are like, well, we should have let the perfect get in the way of the good, or the incrementalism. There hasn't been agreement amongst advocates. Then when you look at key areas where you need those supports, a lot of them are where those advocates are located, right? So when you look at legalization and you see, a bill that's Booker, Schumer, Wyden, right? Really what you're talking about is New York, New Jersey, and Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so like the issues that are playing out and the way that they think about it on the ground and the interests that were involved in that state look different than the interests in Missouri.
Yeah.
Then look different than the interests in named state, Virginia. Right. So you're not going to have that consensus. There are people in New Jersey who are like, we need to address X issue before we do any legalization. You can't have legalization without this X issue.
Yeah.
Right.
You brought up before about how the support for reform is a nationwide long, but only an inch deep. And this is not a too far right, left type issue that's going on right now. You have bipartisan support, but from my understanding, if we want to modernize like a lot of these laws and a lot of the videos that I've been creating the last couple of weeks, is that the main reason why Trump probably wants to do this, and yes, he's listening to all kinds of conversations, is to steal this issue from the Democrats. Am I reading that correctly? Are we reading that correctly?
I think that's a right read, because I think that they're sitting around Trump. Okay, so on issues that are not that ideological, and I would argue that marijuana legalization is less ideological now than it ever has been. Mm-hmm. Okay, on issues like that, people will look to cherry pick wins. Right. And I think that Trump doesn't. I think that he would look to cherry pick a win on this over the Democrats, and say, this is something I got done that Biden talked about and that Democrats have been talking about, especially in the case of rescheduling. Let's go. Now, is he going to get? Are there portions of his base that don't want to see that? Yeah, there are. Right. You have people who are law and order and reform, okay, that are likely not for this policy, which they're leaning on a lot in a lot of their domestic policy and their considerations. So it's an unnatural thing. But the thing is that it's Donald Trump and the Trump administration. Mm-hmm. Okay. If he decides that that's what he wants to do, which we think that is where, that this is going, that's when the issue plays out differently, because it's an audience of one. And I think that he's conditioning the Republican Party, because remember, if he moves a certain way, and look at the way the issues have developed in the Republican Party, when the president has moved, everybody in the Republican Party has fallen in line and fallen behind him. And I think that on this type of issue, that really, quite frankly, people have I think one way about it. Like, even the people who are against it, they don't care so much about it that they're like, well, I'm going to vote someone out of office. Poll after poll I take, right? And I have come back there, with people who are not for marijuana legalization. They're like, yeah, but I'm not going to vote out someone who's for this.
So that's
correct. But would they vote out? But at the same time, would they vote out, or would they negatively have an opinion of someone that didn't reschedule cannabis? That's it's complete inaction. Do you think that would have any sort of negative effect? Because I don't think it would.
I haven't really tested. I haven't really tested for that, but I think that it's likely that if one's likely, and you don't know this when you go out into the field, but if one's likely, the other one is probably also likely. But people don't think logically. You could go and test that question. I could tell you what I think. I think that's what we get. But you go out and test it, and you're like, wait a second, right? Because I would have thought probably even before testing that question, like what I'm saying is very informed by actually going out and doing surveys to the electorate and like finding out what it is, right? Like it's not, that's my view of what people think about it. All right. I don't want to have that view. I don't want to say, hey, people are not passionate about X, Y, or Z. I've never seen an open-ended survey in all the elections that I've ever worked on, right? And for those of you in the audience who don't know, like I've worked on a bunch of elections that have nothing to do with marijuana, right? Getting people elected to all different positions in government. I will tell you, I've never seen a poll that's come back on an open-ended issue question where marijuana legalization actually, when you ask a voter, what are the most important issues to you? I've never seen a poll come back with marijuana legalization in it.
Well,
no, you don't give it, it doesn't come back.
But that leads me. But that leads me to my initial point. If the people didn't have access to cannabis, would they then be more passionate towards it, and would it be an issue that resonated? Because at the same time, like obviously advocates want legalization, they want social equity, they want equality within this movement, criminal justice reform. But at the same time, is it not an issue to voters because it's not an issue? Like they can access cannabis if they want it, and if they need it, they can get it as well, which makes it neutral to some regard.
It's just not that issue. That's why you're not seeing like a bunch of ads. Like when you see a targeted congressional race, how many ads are being run on marijuana legalization?
None.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a reason for that, right? Yeah. It's like you go in, you poll, all right, you look at these districts. You find out what the issues are. You don't think it's been polled? Of course it's been polled. Yeah. Like it's always polled, right?
But this to me, this goes to like the whole point, not the whole point. He wants to steal this issue, but a major audience that he would target is the 30 and under crowd. Maybe that, I don't know how much they take part in polls, but that's the audience that would hit home to like stealing this issue and gaining that popularity. So that's why I'm like, that's a good question.
I think it's a litmus test. Look, I think it's a litmus test thing. Just because it doesn't appear that way doesn't mean that it doesn't have impact on politics. Correct. I'm just telling you the way that it has impact on politics is different. Yeah. Right. You think this is guns, abortion. It's not. Right. So, all right. So let's accept that it's not that. All right. Well, then there are other important issues that go on that work their way through the public that get legislated all the time. Right. You just have to remember that that's the field that you're playing in. Mm-hmm. Okay. You're not playing in that other field. All right. And it's different. If there's a ballot initiative, all right, that can change turnout. I'm talking about like a single candidate election. I'm talking about an election for House. Now, are there some elections where this has come up and this has been campaigned on? Yeah. I mean, I would argue, Fetterman's first race on legalization in Pennsylvania. It was a big thing. It's just not the norm. All right. So it's not like, Medicare. It's not,
Mike,
what I mean?
When we go to the Dirksen building and we run into hallways, and then in between these senators coming out, we'll see the members from CNN, Fox. They ask us who we are. We have the conversation. I can see on their body language, like these guys are doing cannabis. Like they don't understand it. Right. And a great example as to how much of importance this is, there hasn't been one reporter that has asked a question about cannabis since that morning of August 11th, where President Trump talked about, we'll be making a decision in a few weeks. And that to me is telling. There's not been one question, even though this quote unquote polls heavily in favor of reform across the country right now. Like you said, popularity is a nationwide, but it's an inch deep.
Yeah. And I think that's that's sort of the thing. But like, there are a bunch of interests that are like that, right? It's not like we're sitting here and saying, okay, like who's running an election on alcohol, right? Like, like it's not that. Like that's sort of what you're looking at. Like you would never do that, right? That hasn't been a thing since the 1930s. Okay,
was that a big thing in politics back then? I assume it was.
What the reason why you had prohibition is because it was a central issue politically. And then when it became untaxed, I think there's a lot to learn from that. I mean, then when it became untaxed, or when it became legal, like there was this whole movement, but it also piggybacked off of other movements in politics too that were going on at the time, that were, powerful, that were powerful electorally, religious movements, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So,
let me ask you this. There's been rumors circulating today about a future event tying in rescheduling here in the short term for potential rescheduling, as I said. Do you buy into that at all, that rescheduling is pretty much done? It's just a calculated approach on timing of it all? And if so, like what kind of event would we be looking at? Like Veterans Day, November 11th? Like that's a lot of speculation involved here. But are you hearing anything that believes that we are on the verge of change? And if so, like what event would make sense to tie this in, to have not just a standalone issue, but it's supporting of others? And obviously veterans being at the forefront would be ideal.
Well, I wonder about what type of event is it? Is it a forward-looking event where they do it around something that all of us know about? Or is it a reactive event where there's some political crisis going on and it gets thrown out to change the news cycle?
Right.
And I could make the argument for either one of them. But I think that their right time, when they say, all right, when I hear in public, it's like, all right, when it's politically advantageous. Politically advantageous to me means a couple of different things. It means something that helps the midterm elections is politically advantageous. That's very traditional of how that would help. And those midterms have kind of already started. Yeah. Right. That's one spot where political advantage. The other thing would be, is there a crisis? We know we're going to do this and we want to change a news cycle. That's sort of the other way. And let me tell you something, that way of doing things would never happen under most other administrations. But in this administration, they could do it. It could be on the shelf and they could be like, all right, we want to talk about this and we want to do it at this time because we just want to change the narrative. And then that's what happens. So I could see either of those situations play out where it's like, oh, wait, we just announced rescheduling. Yeah. But it's, October 20th. But what's the significance of that day? Well, the significance of that day is that announcement.
It's honestly why I was kind of hoping for a while that the Epstein thing would blow up and just become an animal on its own, because then you just insert cannabis to kind of start to hijack the news cycle and bring a new narrative into there. But it kind of died down to a certain degree.
Yep. Good point. All right. You said about changing the narrative. Let's focus now on Virginia, where the governor's race, it could determine whether adult use passes or not. We're seeing Democrat Abigail Spanberger. She holds a lead, but her margin is tightening against Republican Winsome Earle-Sears. Last week during a debate, Spanberger defended the push for a regulated retail market, but faced sharp attacks over consistency in leadership. Since then, the reaction amongst Virginians has been somewhat negative, and her lead seems to be shrinking. So are you paying much attention to this? Because we all know in the event that if she doesn't win the gubernatorial race, there's real concerns of what this could happen with the proposed adult use cannabis market in Virginia and whether or not it goes live, because we need more markets to go live. And I think everybody's hoping, obviously, that Spanberger wins here.
Spanberger has said positive things about legalization all the way through. Obviously, under the last governor, that was a severe block that happened a couple different times when the legislature was doing it. So it's like, okay, we changed the governor. Maybe we were able to change what happens and the fact that it gets passed. I think that if Spanberger is in, I agree with the sentiment that there isn't much of a question about what may happen. I think that if we have a Republican governor there, I think it's going to depend. Would she want to?
Yeah.
Would she want to pick up that fight and pick up that mantle? Because there was a lot of political capital that was expended around vetoing, those bills. Or is it just like, you know what? I get it. This is what they did, right? Like we see a governor in Ohio saying like, look, I saw the press conference that was sort of the hemp intoxicant press conference. There was a question of him where it was like, all right, are you going to be against legalization? We know that, the public, and I was like, it's like the public spoke, on this stuff. Yeah, I'm against it, but no, that's the public already did it. And I'm here to, do what I do. I mean, that could be the attitude of that could be the attitude if the next governor is Republican. Numbers have gotten closer. We've seen tightening of races, which is likely some of these voters coming home after not having come home. So I think that we're seeing. I think that's what we're seeing. I still think. Well, I don't know. I don't know. If you ask me, all right, do I think she's going to win? I think it's more likely than not that she wins, but I'm not like, I know what has been said by the Republican candidate in the past. I just don't know if that's necessarily the political capital that somebody's going to want to expend in the future.
It appears right now like this is less about whether or not legalization should happen, and this is more about, I think, who gets to decide whether it happens or not. Don't you think?
Maybe even how it happens.
Yeah,
and that's the competing vision that we're talking about. Maybe it's how it happens. Maybe it's more conservative. If that's the way that it goes. But I do think all this talk, even what I've said before, we are moving the right direction. Like, right. Let's not make a mistake. We are moving the right direction here. Okay. I just really think that we as a movement, we have to be more sanguine and also more strategic in how we think about how we're dealing with these different states, and also how we're dealing with legalization as a whole. This is a great example of that in Virginia. Okay, there really should be support here, like the industry. I know there's been industry discussion on both sides of this. So I think folks are sussing out this race. And by the way, being politically engaged to begin with is really helpful. That's something that for years we had talked about in industry, but I don't think people complain right now about political participation from the industry. I think that memo's been gotten.
Yeah.
Correct.
So if she holds on and wins, she'll inherit what's called a I can't even speak right now. A draft legalization framework that's already in progress. She'll also face pressure to balance regulation, equity, and taxation. So when I outline all that, like what specific levers should investors be watching, like licensing caps, local opt-ins, vertical integration limits? Like, what are you seeing that we should pay attention to if this indeed does pass?
All of that. I think that what people are looking at is they look at what does the licensure look like, right?
Yeah.
Because there's sort of a market projection and who's doing what in the market. So you can make some assumptions when you're running the math backwards when you're looking at this. I find that a lot of folks take that into account, right? What that population metric is, what the likely sales are on it, what type of regulatory program, what products will be permitted in market, how many locations there'll be. All of these types of things are general questions that folks are looking at it. Who's already there? What's that framework likely to look like when conversion happens? Yeah. Those are the types of things that I think people are most who are sophisticated are most thinking about.
So if we create two scenarios here, if Spanberger wins narrowly or decisively, like, does this weaken her mandate to move forward on cannabis reform, or does it move quickly? Like, does it matter whether she wins by this much or this much?
If you're a good politician, you claim a mandate no matter what.
Correct.
Like, whatever the numbers are, you just claim the mandate. And I think I learned that from George Bush's second election, where it was like, wait a second, it was pretty close. And then they're like, oh, it's a mandate. And they started passing like all this stuff. If you call it a mandate, right? Like it's actually not about the number. It's about the perception of whether it's a mandate.
Yeah.
You have to, so I think the claim of the mandate, elected for this type of issue, she's elected. She has a mandate to govern on this issue. Certainly has a mandate. I think either candidate.
Where are we at in Pennsylvania, Michael?
Yeah.
We kind of just at a complete just impasse with what's
There's
going on.
The budget impasse is still going on, and it's October,
Okay.
which is really disheartening.
Mhm.
There have been blowups last week. There was a pretty public blowup in the state where a budget was not agreed to, and Democrats came out and chastised Republicans on legal marijuana, which they had proposed as a revenue item in the budget.
Okay.
And have said that, Republicans in the Senate have not agreed to this. They haven't run it. And we proposed this as a revenue item. It was the first time that I think really we saw all of leadership on the Democratic side collectively point to that issue in public as they were negotiating. I think a lot of things have been happening behind the scenes. So we saw Chairman Jordan Harris, who's the chair of the Appropriations Committee, say this was our revenue item. We saw Leader Bradford on the House side say this was our revenue item. We saw Jay Costa, who's the minority senator minority leader in the Pennsylvania State Senate, stand up on the floor and say legal marijuana was our revenue item. This is what we have to be talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
The bill that's passed the House doesn't include any new revenue sources.
Okay.
They are jammed up. I think Republicans on the Senate side can't agree on skill games and the regulation of them. So they can't agree on the gaming issue. And they certainly have not gotten agreement. And I think, by the way, on that, there's a lot more that's been litigated inside the Republican caucus to the point where it's a tougher conversation. Cannabis legalization, I think has, the Senate Republicans have tried to keep off the table in a budget scenario. I think that they have they themselves, I think, have concerns about what it would mean to enact cannabis legalization, one on the social conservative side of their caucus, and the other about, again, what the electoral, it's funny because we spent a lot of time talking about what the electoral consequences are, but they actually have concerns about what electoral consequences might mean if they had to take a tough vote on that issue. So the conversation is still ongoing.
Okay. So is this issue more than an inch deep here in Pennsylvania, as we've been discussing here tonight?
Yeah, I think at the local level, there is something different when you're passing legalization at the local level, especially when you're trying to pick it up as a revenue item.
Right.
So it's more than an inch deep on this because you have legislators who want to see the revenue. They may not even care about legalization, but they care about the revenue that's going to come from legalization. And so that gets them animated about the subject. So when we see there's certain Democrats that feel that way, there's certain Republicans that feel that way that are elected officials. Like, all right, we know what the poll numbers are, and that's great. They're good poll numbers. But the thing that we really care about is delivering revenue because it'll enact X program.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what we're seeing.
Well, let's move north to Michigan, where a group of Wolverines, otherwise known as retail owners, stormed the state Senate. This is crazy, this 24% wholesale cannabis tax. Have you been following this closely at all?
Yeah, and as we said last week, this taxation issue is real. And it's a very, very bad.
This state has become so complicated. And it's unfortunate considering the amount of revenue that it produces every single year.
It's a huge market.
Huge market.
Yeah.
It's a huge market. I mean, why is Michigan?
So how does this play out? Because we see this enacting like on January 1st, 2026. Does that mean we're going to see a boatload of stores going out and buying inventory between now and the end of the calendar year before this tax is enacted? No.
I mean, look, you might see some. You know what I mean? It's sort of like when you look at the tariff discussion and people load up prior to something.
You can only load up so much.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, it's a really bad situation, and these tax situations are a real problem. I mean, you're not going to be able to get rid of the illicit market or have a regulated system taxing things through the roof.
Yeah.
No, and Michigan's already got a problem with their caregiver. I actually like what they're doing with their caregiver program in the state of Michigan, so I don't want to frame it as a problem, but it does eat into the legal market in the state of Michigan on top of the taxes that they're going to levy and increase on the industry. Michigan's going to become, I don't even know what stronger word to use other than uninvestable, but I mean, it's going to become just carnage if that tax is dropped and goes all the way home to being implemented.
Is there any chance this tax gets struck down?
It's really controversial.
Yeah.
I think if it goes against, it really is found fundamentally to go against, what was approved. I think that if folks think that it, if there's enough pushback, right on this, I mean, it's tough because of the way that it came to be. It's not like people didn't know what they were doing, when they pushed it through. And remember, it was all these other issues that the legislature in Michigan was pointed to in order to close ranks on funding issues. But I think that if this does continue to happen, we're all going to be the victims of learning the lesson as to why it shouldn't have. Because if you tax people out of existence, you're killing the thing that's feeding the revenue to begin with.
Yeah.
Right.
So is that like a lesson that we have to that is a lesson as old as time. And the thing that states are going to have to realize is that their tax schemes don't live on an island.
Correct.
What's the state next to you doing? All right, fine. What's the federal government doing? With 280E makes a lot of the tax structures at the local level impossible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's going on? These tax structures, by the way, probably would be they would not be the issue that we're talking about right now if we got rid of 280E.
Correct.
Taxation policy is going to be like the big policy thing. It's already the big policy thing that's not talked about enough. Mm-hmm. That this thing is going to bring it to front and center.
Well, the governor, Gretchen Whitmer, not doing any favors. That state has turned red and is big Trump supporters, especially when it comes to this automotive industry. And there's been some backlash regarding the tariffs. But Governor Whitmer, she was mandating masks and lockdowns during COVID. And there's a long history of people just very unhappy with her as governor. And this is just the latest in what appears to be the straw that breaks the backbone of this Michigan market right now, because unlimited state or licenses within the state, wholesale prices have just been next to zero. And if you add on taxes, how does a company actually be profitable in a market of that size? It's too complicated. But if that indeed does happen, and this tax does pass, what does Michigan look like in 12 months from now?
It's bad. And I think that the thing that people have to understand is when you legalize marijuana, the government needs to understand this, and you give out a license, you have a responsibility here. People took going for that license in good faith. And what was sold was economic opportunity.
Yeah, there was.
And it can't be that you incentivize people not to participate in the system. Okay.
Agreed.
And that's a big problem. So if you really want to keep this going and you want legalization and you want regulation, you've got to aid the market. And some people have not, and I think in the legislature have not gotten their heads around that. And it matters. You can't just sort of be like a half step on that problem. So what could happen?
Well, this will just leave a handful of companies that will dominate the market at the end, would it not?
I don't think you're going to see people rooting for that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think.
But I know Michigan and the way it's controlled right now, there is a close knit of operators that are just decimating everything in sight and are controlling it. And that's the stage we're at.
Yeah, but I don't care I don't care how many operators in the market. Putting that tax on any of these businesses, I mean, you fundamentally alter the entire P&L. The businesses are going to just poof. Like that is such a heavy tax to put on those businesses. I mean, pricing has gone nothing but down in the Michigan market. I don't know what price you would need to get to create a path to equilibrium to offset that tax, but it sure as hell isn't where the market is right now.
Yeah.
From a retail and wholesale perspective.
Agreed.
And killing off other companies isn't going to cure that. Everyone's going to go back to the black market.
For sure they will. But I beg the question as to how many people outside of what we follow here in the space really understand that, because there's a lot of people I talk to over there that still don't.
They're about to. I think that's the problem. Like, they're about to. If you see stores closing, right, and you see people getting laid off and you see what it is, right, there are a lot of times where in a legislature, there are a lot of people in the country who are warned, like, of getting heart attacks, right?
Yeah.
And only when they get the heart attack do they go and they change diet and exercise. Do they do whatever, right? Because it actually has to be a lived experience. This better not get to be one of those lived experiences.
Good point.
No.
Okay, this is a problem.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the takeaway here today is I like what you said earlier, and I've said it a few times: nationwide support and an inch deep. And Anthony keeps laughing at that. But then also, all in all, if there's a big takeaway as to PA direction, and do you think this passes by the end of the calendar year, knowing that it has to with this budget?
The budget, it depends on how the budget closes, right? If they pass sort of what I'll call, a skinnier budget without any revenue items, it depends on how it closes. Is there a deal that's in place to say, okay, this is what we're going to pass, right? I think it's not knowable until, I mean, we're in October and we don't have a budget.
I know.
Okay, it's bonkers. And a budget deal fell apart last week. This will be either the second longest budget run in the last 20 years or the first largest by the time.
And of course, it's reaching these historic hurdles with cannabis involved. It's just our luck.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, what's the expression? If it wasn't for bad luck, we wouldn't have any luck at all. Is that the
correct?
I watched the opening scene in Naked Gun, 90? O.J. Simpson walks into that boat and he gets shot, and then all of a sudden he bangs his head off of a post. Then he touches a hot thing, goes up against a door with wet paint, pinches his fingers on windows. I'm like, there's a cannabis investor right there for you. Anyway, all right. Always good catching up with you. We'll see you back here next Monday. Okay, my friend?
Looking forward to it. And I saw that in the theater, man. That's just telling my age.
It's a long time ago. All right. Insider's Edge presented by Attach with Michael Bronstein. Thanks, Michael.
Catch you a little bit.
All right. Good stuff.
By the way, just so everybody knows, Glass House is now available on Robinhood. So Mark Cahode's talk the talk when it came to that. Because I think he and the boys over at Porter Collins, I think it's Seawolf, were instrumental in getting that done over at Robinhood.
That's huge. Very huge.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we can get Robinhood to sponsor our podcast eventually. That would be ideal. But listen, good show here today. Good insights from Michael for sure. And I like the take that he had on some of the stuff, just regards to like how a lot of these politicians view cannabis. And yes, there are lots of things that we discuss day in and day out, week in and week out. But this isn't abortion. This isn't gun rights. It's telling. But as we've said in a few times here in the past couple of weeks, if this is going to get across, and I know there's a lot of points that we like to make in this space, but truthfully, to make it valuable, it's a bipartisan support. So one party is going to steal the issue from another party, and that seems to be at the forefront right now, if that does indeed happen. And all these other things do make sense, but I think this is about to become very political if indeed it does pass, and that's the reality.
We'll see.
We shall see.
All
right, my friend. Good stuff. Happy Thanksgiving again to all of our Canadian viewers out there. Hope you're having some good old turkey, maybe napping here today with some tryptophan in your system. But we'll be back here on Wednesday, 4 o'clock. We'll keep you all posted as to who we'll be having on. I'm not sure if we got anybody lined up here yet. Trying to get a panel discussion with both Trent from Jushi and the MaryMed team just to talk about the PA market and the opportunity that does present. So we'll keep you all posted there as well. Quick tee up. Tomorrow on TDR Plus, I'm actually going to have Zach George, CEO of SNDL on. We're going to go live at 3 o'clock on TDR Plus. This isn't going to be about the company itself. We're doing these new CEO interviews. It's going to talk about them as a person, how they got started in entrepreneurship. Basically another side of these CEOs that you've never seen before. So if you want to check out just who Zach is and really where a lot of his expertise comes from and where it all started, make sure to check us out in the membership community. So if you want to join, just click the join button on our next to our subscribe button on our YouTube channel and become a TDR member today. We'd appreciate it. AV, appreciate the time here today. Everybody for logging on here today. Thanks again as well. And we'll see you all back here at 4 o'clock on Wednesday. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey everyone, thanks again for watching here today. Listen, if you're getting value from us here at TDR, make sure to check us out at TDR Plus. It's our exclusive membership community. Why? Well, you'll see CEO interviews that go beyond business, showing a personal side that you won't find anywhere else, including the biggest names of the industry. Plus, you'll get insights from analysts and day traders on where the industry's headed, both short-term and long-term, and a direct chat group with our team. It's only $7 a month, just 25 cents a day, and it helps support everything we do here at TDR. If you want to join, just click the join button below and become a TDR Plus member today. And once again, a big thank you for being part of our community. So that's it for today. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.